Public comment? Any public comment tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to review of minutes for September 16th, 2020. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Common vic license hearing for Mobil BBQ vendor Robert Mott Jr. doing business as Weekend Smoker. Mr. Mott here. Do you mind coming up, sir? Do you mind coming up to the table? Is this a public hearing, Michael? Is this a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. I'll open the public hearing. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're planning to do? Actually, if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Robert E. Mott Jr. I live at 154 Park Street, Clinton, Mass. 01510. What I would like to do is I have a vending trailer with a wood smoker on the back. I like the hobby I've had for a few years. People have encouraged me to do business, so I'm going to attempt to do that. Down here in Clinton. And it's wood fire smoker, and different meats out of brisket, pulled pork, ribs, and barbecue chicken. Sometimes some fish also.
Perfect. It's being excuse me. It's being a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the proposal? Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition of the proposal? I'm going to close that part of the public hearing. Any questions from the board? Hearing none. What's the pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we grant the common vic license to Robert Mott Jr. as requested.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
We have another common victual license amendment. High Street Mini Market, location change from 282 High Street to 270 High Street. Do we have anybody here for that? Okay. Okay. This is a location change. I'm going to open the public hearing. Same thing. Is anyone here in favor, to speak in favor of the proposal? Anyone here can speak in opposition? Hearing none, I'm going to close this portion of the hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the common vic license amendment from High Street Mini Market location change from 282 High Street to 270 High Street.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. Is the Board of Health here? Sorry, need your glasses or mask? Welcome, guys.
Evening, gentlemen.
What's the news?
Well, Tom will give you an update.
Okay. Currently, we've had 341 people with the virus in town. We are monitoring 15, and we have 326 that have come off. We picked up 3 today. It's just seems like it's on the rise.
Okay.
The public health nurse will be back in tomorrow and see how she is with her tracing.
Typically, the state comes out with their numbers today. They delayed it a day, so we don't have the figures in front of us. But based on the numbers that we've got over the last 2 weeks, we're definitely going to trend in the red. 2 weeks ago, we had 6 cases. Last week, we had 13. It seems to be the magic number for our town based on population and cases is 16. So we anticipate tomorrow we're definitely going to be in the red, probably for the next 2 weeks. We get into the 3rd week, that's when it jeopardizes closing the school. So we've been talking with town council and Mr. Myers and see if we can come up with a plan. I think But right now, there's 3 cases in the middle school, nothing in the elementary, nothing in the high school. One of those students is homeschool, so I think if things were to stay the same, we might be able to justify remaining open longer than November 3rd. But we won't know. There's new guidelines coming out later in the week or early next week for communities that are in the red. So we really don't have the information we need tonight to bring you exactly up to date where we are. We'll know tomorrow. I don't know if you have any questions for us.
Any questions from the board?
Only, are we gonna get into the Halloween observance? Okay.
Well, after the meeting that was canceled a couple weeks ago, we reached out to the Clinton item to let them know that we were in favor of Halloween based on the information we had at the time. At the time, we were still trending in the yellow, but it was pretty steady. But right now, we've got 15 people being monitored at 9 different homes or apartments in town. We had already said we would have it from 5 to 7 on Saturday. You know, I think it still can be done as long as people are smart about it and go to houses you know, neighborhoods you know, and social distance, wear a mask, and just be aware of the situation. It's only 2 hours. It's kind of late in the game now to cancel it, where families have gone out and bought costumes for their kids and people have gone out and bought candy for Halloween. The only thing we would ask is that if a house has its lights out, they don't want to be disturbed, and we don't know what the circumstances is, so please don't disturb them. And if you don't want to participate, please turn your lights out. So I think we can still have it. I think we can be safe. I think the bigger danger is Halloween parties that night. It's a Saturday night, it's a full moon. I think that's more of a danger than Halloween right now.
I'm just curious if we would, if it would make sense to, I mean, could we recommend that maybe families just leave, as opposed to opening the door and handing candy into bags of children? Is it, I mean, just a loose recommendation that maybe they keep the candy outside? You can still see the children in their costumes through the door, but that way you're kind of limiting that interaction. Or?
No, I think that's a great idea. Leave the candy outside. That way they're not coming door to door, and just let them come up, grab a piece of candy, and be on their way. I mean, if people want to do that, I'm all for that. I think it's a great idea. I mean,
The CDC has guidelines for responsible observations of these holidays, right?
they do, and we posted something online on the webpage, safe practices for going door to door on Halloween, and social distancing, wearing a mask, and not gathering in groups. And we've had that online now for 2 weeks, so we put some information out there. At this point, they're going to do it anyway, so all we can do is ask them to be safe, and it's really on the parents to try and do the right thing, and just not turn your kids loose on the neighborhoods and door to door everywhere. So I think we can still have it, like I said, as long as we're safe.
Any other questions about Halloween? Any other concerns?
Well, with the way we're trending and being in the red and jeopardizing closing schools, we do have concerns. We've got some traveling teams out there who've been pretty good about giving us the rosters. We had a close call, and right now it looks like things are okay, but we'll know more in a few days. But we still have some teams that are traveling out of state to play in basketball tournaments, and that's a concern, because we don't have a list of names of any of these kids, and if someone were to get sick, I mean, we wouldn't know where to start as far as contact tracing and notifying the school or the nurses or anything like that. And I think that's a potential problem going forward. We've reached out to the state, and the governor's in talks right now about coming up with a guideline or a rule. If if you wanna put your kids in AU tournaments and have them travel out of state in high-contact sports that aren't allowed in Mass, it looks like they may come up with a plan to have them homeschool, make it mandatory. Which is something, I mean, I hope it doesn't get to that, but we've already started discussions with town council and with Steve Myers, and we'll probably meet sometime next week to try to have something in place in the event that that does happen. But it possibly could jeopardize closing the school. Right now, we're not in bad shape, not in great shape, but I think we can get through this if we're smart and be limited and try to get some of the parents to stop traveling.
So how do we, if we don't know who the kids are, we
No.
don't have the rosters, how do we keep tabs on
The baseball teams that played out of state all submitted rosters, so we knew who every kid was. We cross-referenced them with the grades, with the different sports in town. So we had a great, they were very helpful. They did a great job with it, and we knew exactly, where they were. Soccer did the same thing. So if something does happen, we're able to cross-reference the list and contact trace with the school, and we feel that it's been safe. Without having that information in front of us, we're kind of chasing our tail, trying to get the information. We don't even know where to begin, or who the coaches are, or who the parents are. So that's an obstacle we have to overcome going forward, and hopefully through cooperation, rather than coming out with a new regulation and not allowing people to play in these games or force them to homeschool. It's not the kids' fault. So I'm hoping that we don't have to go that far.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm just curious, so there's only so many basketball leagues around, and I'm sure that we would be able to find out, maybe we wouldn't be able to find out everyone, but I'm just curious if we were able to identify a league that we knew there were Clinton kids participating in, and we know the town where that league is headquartered, could the Board of Health in that town be some assistance to us in if anything else, trying to help us to get a roster for those kids?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, they're not playing in Mass, they're playing in New Hampshire. And I wouldn't know where to begin. I don't know what towns they're playing in or who they're playing against. So that's our dilemma. There's no way we can trace them without coaches or people who are running the leagues coming forward and giving us a list. We certainly didn't endorse it. It's been going on with basketball, probably some hockey, probably some soccer. We just have no way of finding out.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, is there a way to maybe ask the school department to put the word out through a take-home letter or an email or a contact to the parents of the kids in the school system, and make them, if they're not already aware, make them aware of the problem and ask them to step up, be adults, and be supportive of the restrictions that we have in place, and not have their children and their behavior be the cause of closing down the schools. A strongly worded memo from the superintendent talking about the problem of that you just described to us.
Yeah, I mean, we just started these talks the last couple of days, and certainly we could ask the superintendent to do something like that before we have to force kids to homeschool. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's the last resort. We don't want to go that route. And if the governor, he could have guidelines next week on what to do. But I think we have to be ready for whatever scenario is thrown our way.
But you just said earlier that we were potentially 2 to 3 weeks away from closing down the schools.
Absolutely.
So, and this problem that you just described could be the catalyst that causes that situation. So I think the parents of the children who are participating in these types of activities need to be reminded, apparently, of the severity of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could be a contributing factor. I mean, with everything moving indoors with the cold weather, it is not helping our cause either. So it's a number of different things. It's people not wearing masks. It's people not social distancing. You know, traveling out of state to play sporting events. You know, there's a number of things that are still going on. And quite frankly, people have had enough of it, and I don't blame them. I have too. So there's a number of issues we have to address going forward, but we're trying to stay ahead of it and rather than be behind it. So we'll meet with the superintendent, town council, if one of the selectmen or two of the selectmen like to get involved, and maybe the school committee, and see if we can draft something, maybe a letter to go out next week, and then come up with a procedure, how we're gonna address this in the future. You know, we got a ways to go here. The next 6 to 12 weeks are gonna be worse than they are now. So our original goal was to keep the schools open until Thanksgiving. Still not giving up on that. So we're gonna do the best we can.
Yeah, I understand that people want to get back to normal and let kids enjoy the things that they've enjoyed in the past and have Halloween and have Thanksgiving and Christmas. Our margin of error is gone. And as Mr. Lipka said, summer's over. We're all going to have to go inside. We won't be eating on High Street or gathering around fire pits in our backyard. We have to go inside, and we have to get smarter, because we're going to be in the red. And if we stay there, the inconvenience of homeschooling is going to become a necessity, a permanent necessity. So I just really implore people, we're not doing this for the fun of it. None of us enjoys this. I have 2 kids at home this week who are getting dumber because, frankly, they're not getting the attention they deserve. And the schools are doing a great job. This is just very hard on everybody, and we understand it. We're not doing this for the fun of it. We're not doing this because we want to punish people. We're all in this together. We're just asking that everybody does their part. There's some very clear guidelines that are proven to make a difference. And if we can just stay on this, we'll make the best of it together.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
Question, please. Steve, if somebody came to you right now from Clinton and said that they were interested in starting a basketball league in Clinton, they wanted to play 5-on-5 basketball, normal basketball rules, what would the Board of Health say to that?
Well, they couldn't play based on the governor's order. It's a high-contact sport.
Okay.
And it's been postponed. Yeah, the high school's not playing. It's been postponed until probably winter or early spring. Right?
Okay.
So it wouldn't happen.
All right. So if in a perfect world, if we were able to find out what leagues, what children, the rosters, say in a perfect world we were able to get all that information, what do you think, what would you recommend would be the next step if we were able to get all that information, which is a big if, but.
Well, I mean, you'd want to ask that they not participate anymore. The only thing you could do, I think the only measures we have, our board, is to close down the fields and force the kids to homeschool, which is, right, and both of those are last resorts. Hopefully we can reason with them with maybe a letter from the superintendent and strongly suggest that let's put an end to this. We had a good 4 months with the summer and early fall. Let's focus on schoolwork and back to school and try to stay open as long as we can.
Okay. Because we did, at our last meeting, we did talk about this briefly, this exact scenario, when Dr. Meyer was here. And we can follow up with the schools to see where they're at, but I know that they were looking into, you know, is it, at the time, they weren't even sure if it was legally possible to tell a student to homeschool if they were discovered to have been playing in basketball out of state. So I think it'd probably be a good idea to follow up with Dr. Meyer and see if they were able to come to any legal guidance on that. And I mean, the way I feel, no one wants to be doing this, but if the state of Massachusetts says that basketball is a high-risk sport, I find it irresponsible to just drive out of state and play basketball and then come back into Massachusetts. And especially for the fact that like the Board of Health was saying, we have no idea who the kids are they're playing, we have no rosters, we have no ability to do any contact tracing, God forbid that there is any sort of a breakout. So I hope that parents take this serious, because we're trending in the red, we're heading into winter, this is gonna get worse before it gets better, and I think we just have to be supportive of the Board of Health, and we'll talk to the schools and find out what their answers were on if there is any ability to, at the very least, separate the kids that are playing a high-risk sport from the rest of the population of the school, so that we can contain any type of an outbreak.
Would it be would it be helpful if we were to send a letter to the state health regulatory agencies in the neighboring states, suggesting that we know that there are participants in their leagues coming from a red community or an almost red community, and maybe they might want to look into regulating that over-the-border traffic?
You know, I'm trying to figure out what the rationale would be for a state like New Hampshire, who's doing well as far as testing, to allow this to happen. It doesn't make sense. The state of Mass is tested at almost 5% now a day. To allow that to happen, I don't understand. It could be the private facilities, therefore they're not governed by the state. But I don't know. I don't know where it's taking place, so it's hard to answer. And who will we send the letter to?
Right.
Anything will help. I mean, I'll try anything.
Can't hurt.
I'm surprised that someone, the people in charge in New Hampshire or Vermont aren't aware of this and consider, I mean, they have their own protocols for anyone coming into the state. Quarantine either 14 days at your home or 14 days after you get there, that type of thing.
Well, I think this is probably going to be the new hot topic. We got through the Freedom of Information Act, we got a request from Channel 25 of how many kids in the school system tested positive, each school, and how many kids tested positive in youth sports. So we submitted that today. We had nobody that we're aware of in youth sports that tested positive. So we submitted that information, but I would assume that went out statewide, and
Yeah.
compiling the data, and that's probably going to be a story in the very near future. That's probably why the governor's office is working on something right now.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on this?
Only that this is specific problem with this specific sport, I think, is only going to get worse, because we're in October right now. I mean, that's not even really basketball season. In another month or so, more fatigue is going to set in, and then it's going to be actual basketball season. And I think we just need to be ahead of this. That's all.
We'll draft something for Dr. Meyer. And we have Executive Order 50 for outdoor dining on here.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just wanted, Mr. Duffy just asked to bring this forward. The new executive order extended the outdoor dining. It can be set, the Board of Selectmen and Board of Health can set it to a time specific, or the governor's order said, I think it was 60 days after the emergency ends. So if we just want to let it ride and go on when the governor ends it, or if we wanted to, the town wanted to end it themselves. So we just wanted to be able to, I think Mr. Duffy just wanted to be able to give clarification to the businesses that are affected.
Do you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, I don't notice much outdoor dining right now. It's definitely got cold. Nobody really has heaters out there or tents, so I don't really see it a problem if we're to have a 80 or 90 degree day in the next week or two. I don't see that as an issue right now, personally.
Do we need to take action on this, Michael, or is it just?
Yeah. So I think the initial vote was to November.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to extend it to whenever, or extend it, to however, so maybe just a vote, I guess, just to affirm that you're supportive of the Board of Health's position.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we support whatever recommendation the Board of Health has for regulating this, but that we extend the deadline to, consistent with the governor's proposal of, what was it, 30 days after? 60 days after the state of emergency, and that's always subject to review and change if
Second.
circumstances change.
Motion
I
made,
think
seconded.
he
Any
extended it
discussion?
to November 30th.
Sorry?
I think he extended it to November 30th, which we're fine with.
Any discussion? Yeah, I think considering the state of High Street right now, any options we can give these people to make some money safely is a good one. So, hearing no other discussion, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. You guys need anything else?
No, we're good.
All right.
Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you do, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next up, outstanding personal property tax collections. The treasurer collector and principal assessor are here to answer questions on a point that they brought up about outstanding personal property taxes for businesses in Clinton. Thank you for coming. You want to go with questions? You want a summary here? What do you want?
Just maybe a brief outline of the magnitude of the problem, dollar-wise.
Problem dollar-wise?
Dollar-wise, how significant is the amount outstanding?
I mean, it probably represents 0.5% of the annual commitment. But it's, several businesses, and, our viewpoint is it's not fair for one if the other one doesn't pay theirs and someone does. So we'd like to be able to have any teeth in any kind of collection. And Dave has it, read it here, but it's Chapter 40, Section 57, which controls licenses and things that the town issues that could be withheld if they have pending outstanding taxes.
And
So we support that.
And we can do that now?
Yes, I mean, I would defer to Michael, of course, regarding bylaw change, but it is something that we looked at in the past. I think it was a year ago that it was on the docket to be adopted at town meeting or presented at town meeting, and somehow it fell off the radar. I think it's a straightforward method that gives control to the board to retain some licenses in the event that people are delinquent.
So we would need town meeting action to implement that.
I believe so.
Right. Would that be something that could be done at special town meeting? Mr. Chairman, I'd be supportive of, at our earliest town meeting, adopting legislation that authorizes us to withhold licensing and permits from people that are tax delinquent.
I think initially it's accepting the provisions of that statute, so I think that could be done at a special town meeting. And then we can work with town solicitor to see how we would craft the bylaw, whether that authorizes us to do it or whether it's another town meeting. But at least to get it started, this could be on a special town meeting to accept the provisions of 4057. Yeah.
I guess that was a motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. So we'll be putting this on the next available meeting warrant, which we are talking about later in the night, so it might be sooner rather than later.
We could add real estate tax to any tax that's outstanding to the town. If it isn't current, they shouldn't be able to renew the license.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just have another question before
Yeah.
they depart us. Are there any other mechanisms or any other actions that the board or the town could take to help enhance the collection of these outstanding taxes?
I mean, it's a unique tax in personal property, the real estate, you've got control over the real estate, excise, you've got control over the vehicles, their licenses. So this is a particularly tough area, but we always have the option of going right up to Clinton District Court and Civil Court and filing small claims actions against anybody. The town hasn't done that in the past, but we have that option without this.
Do you need a vote from the Board of Selectmen to encourage that action?
I wouldn't think we needed to vote for it,
Okay.
but this would be a much more, my opinion, a better way to handle it
Yep.
than dragging people into small claims.
Okay.
All right, thanks for coming in, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next up, the auction of 64 Plain Street. Ms. Hodge.
I brought a visual of the top full. Hello, so I became aware of the auction of 64 Plain Street because DPW, who's responsible for the property, had sent us a note. The Clinton Greenway Conservation Trust owns a parcel that abuts it. So we're just interested in what the town's plan is relative to the auction, the reasons for it, et cetera.
Mr. Buslow, you want to tackle this one? This is yours.
I think in all fairness to the local taxpayers, we should take the property, it should be sold to the public. We have more than enough open space with the Rocha Farm. You know, it's not fair to the taxpayers, we should put it up for sale.
Well, it is up for sale, so that was what I wanted to understand is, what was the reasoning that the town needed the revenue relative to this parcel?
It's
Were there
part-
any other considerations?
I think the,
Can you explain the price? This is part of a larger auction.
Yes, this was, along with 8 other pieces of property, we're selling for taxes and back taxes, okay, right? So in order to help out the regular taxpayers, we're selling the property. And if anybody in the future wants to do anything with the property, where it is near a brook, okay, right? They have to go before the conservation before they get anything. So this way here, we get it back on the tax roll, the conservation still has control on it, and that should keep everybody happy.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to understand is if there were any considerations relative to brownfields, because there has been some contamination from Rigby Brook into Counterpane Brook, and I don't know if that's something that was part of the consideration for the auction of that site.
Rigby Road is not on there, no ma'am.
I'm sorry, it's Rigby Brook.
There's a small piece of land on Rigby Road, but it's nowhere near a brook.
No, that's not what I'm sorry, I think I wasn't clear in my question. So Rigby Brook flows into Counterpane Brook and meets Counterpane Brook on this parcel. There has been contamination coming from Rigby Brook into Counterpane Brook and eventually to the Nashua River. So my question was brownfields or any other contamination of the site part of the consideration for the auction? And since you seem to not know about it, I'm guessing no.
Mr. Chairman,
So,
if I
so
may?
for example, similar to the Sterling Street parcel, that there was some interest in using that for recreational space. But we know that there's been contamination on the site, so the better plan for the town is to address that parcel as a brownfields parcel where the developer would then be responsible for cleanup. So that was my question, was whether there were any issues relative to contamination as part of the parcel.
To my knowledge, there's no known contamination on that parcel.
Okay.
And if there was migration from Rigby Road area of the brook downstream, then that same issue would taint every single parcel of land from the beginning to the Nashua River. And to date, the other parcel you referred to, it's been identified that there's issues with the site itself, nothing to do with Rigby Brook or Rigby Road. So I'd be surprised if there's an issue with this piece of land, and if there is, it's let the buyer beware, I guess, is the
Right.
anyone that purchases the land would be subject to all the environmental and conservation restrictions that
Conservation
protect
plan,
all wetlands in
what's
town.
involved.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you answered my questions, which was that you want to get the parcel back in the tax rolls and that there were not any considerations relative to it being a Brownsfield site. So we'd obviously be interested in protecting the parcels around the brook, and since it abuts a parcel that we currently own, and it's a key parcel feeding into the Nashua River, we think it's important to protect those resources, which, as you said, will be addressed by the Conservation Commission with any development.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Do you mind if I just ask a question about the timing of this? It just seems like these properties have kind of been on the town docket for a long time, and I think Selectman Buzzno did the right thing in recognizing that the town is not in the real estate business, and I applaud his efforts to unload some of these properties. I guess my question is just, why is this sudden interest in conserving this land coming up when we are now only less than a month away, or we're only about a month away from the auction? Or I forget the exact date of it, but I know it's coming up close. So, I guess my question is this: if there was interest in conserving this land, if that was expressed even as soon as a year ago, there probably would be more open to this type of discussion. But it just seems like it's a little late in the process.
Well, so the first I became aware that the parcel was being auctioned was last week.
Right,
When at the same time we were making plans to clean up the parcel. So it's been on, listed as open space and owned by the town.
Correct,
so
but
I didn't have any idea.
well, the first time you found out it was for auction was last week, but you've
Yeah,
known that it's
yeah.
been owned by the town for a number of years. So I guess my question is just, if this was an interest of yours or of this group, why wasn't it brought to the board's attention earlier?
Well, because I had no idea that the town had any intention to sell it. It's been owned by the town for a long time, so if,
Well, we did.
yeah, no, I just became aware of it last week, so I'm asking the questions which you've answered.
But okay, I mean, we're just going around in circles.
I'm
I
not-
guess my point is,
so
if you were concerned about conserving it, I would feel you would take action to ensure that we could not sell it.
Well, so certainly in the Town of Clinton Open Space and Recreation Plan, protecting Counterpane Brook is one of the goals and objectives, and has been since it was created in 2000. So this was a town-owned parcel. I personally didn't have any reason to know that the town had an intention to have it sold for development. It's not a very particularly easy site to develop, so, there wasn't any action that I knew about where I needed to take an action to ask the town about that. But it certainly is called out in our open space plan.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
And I'm not asking, so, as Mike knows, I asked what is the town's intent, because I wasn't aware of it. You've answered my questions. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. I want to say, you've been active and heavily involved in a lot of open space and recreation land. And I personally, and I know this board, appreciates all the work that you've done and the Greenway Trust has done. This land was never acquired by the town as open space recreation land.
Correct.
It was taken because the previous owners were negligent in paying their taxes. And it's always in the town's interest when they take land for back taxes, the whole point of it is to get it back on the rolls and collect taxes. So I just don't want the perception to be out there that we're just eating up the open space recreation land. This land was developable commercial land, and we're seeking.
And so, Bill, that's not my intent. I called Mike and asked what to understand the issues. You want to get back on the taxes? You've answered my question.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
High Street Improvement Project update. Mr. McGowan?
Gentlemen,
Hello.
as you probably can see, the High Street project is underway. To date, they've been working out there for about probably a month and a half. The contractor has, so far, they're working on all the underground infrastructure that needs to take place before they can pave the road. Probably right now, between now and the next 3 weeks, will be the most disruptive phase of the project. The plan is in the next week, they're doing the biggest drainage portion of the project which would be down more towards the north end, down the Prospect Street area. You can see that area was closed off today. Most of the work, the underground work in the southern end of the project has been completed. I think there's one more small area of drainage work to be completed there. So they're going to be concentrating next week on finishing up the underground work on the northern end of the site. Then starting the first week of November. So the first 2 weeks of November are probably going to be the most painful part of the process. They're going to be doing the full depth reconstruction of the road, which will entail basically closing off one lane of travel, digging out all of the materials that are there, which is asphalt, concrete, and a little bit of subgrade material, and then bringing that back up to grade. Then they'll move to the other side of the street, move the traffic over to the side. It'll be basically gravel. It's called dense graded crushed stone, which will be the layer that's left. And build the other side of the street, do the same thing up to the dense grade, top of dense graded, which is subgrade. And then they will plan on doing the binder and base coat of pavement. So the plan right now is by November 13th to have the new pavement down on the road up to binder grade. There's a lot of work to be done after that, but at that point it's a very passable, similar to what it looks like down in the north end of High Street on the other project. The road will be very smooth and travelable, and there'll still be plenty of disruption, but most of the work at that point will all be in the gutters of the road, putting in curbing and sidewalks and the underground electrical and the underground irrigation. So then, like I said, the next 3 weeks are critical to get that binder course of pavement down, before the bad weather comes. November 13th is, right now, is their plan to have that done by then, which the weather is, generally you get up to about Thanksgiving. After that, you're picking your days and hoping to get some good weather to keep going. They will continue working on sidewalks, curbing, underground electrical after the 13th, and get as much done as they can before a winter break. But overall, the project's gone very well. No issues with the contractor. We got the contractor and the engineer getting along good enough, which I know when we had first talked, that was a kind of a big question mark I had, and we've been able to manage that quite well, and they're working as a team. Everybody's working as a team, and I'm very happy with the progress so far. So.
Great. Any questions from the board?
A couple.
Please.
Chris, do you anticipate removal and replacement of sidewalks in this calendar year?
There could be. There probably would start down at the north end of the project, down by the post office area, and start working their way up. We did ask them to stay away from kind of the main downtown area where there's businesses at night and stuff. And once they get this subgrade done, they would start some of the curbing and sidewalk work at the north end of the project, yes. Weather dependent, obviously.
The other question I have is, it's not really part of this report, but the Lower High Street project, I believe my observation is Verizon or somebody with the poles is really jamming this project up. And do you see the final?
Yeah, Verizon's still in there, I believe so. So the way, right now, National Grid is 100% moved all of their wires off the pole. That took quite some time. Comcast came in and fairly quickly moved all theirs. Verizon is working on theirs. Theirs is more difficult than Comcast. None of them is more difficult than what National Grid usually has to do. Problem with the Verizon is everything is on the opposite side of the road. So we're trying to get rid of all the poles if you're heading out of town on the left side of the road. We're getting rid of probably 90% of those poles. Right now there's poles on both sides, which I hate, so we're going to be moving, the Verizon's moving over to the other side of the street. So it's a big project for them. They are working on it. That storm, that freak windstorm that came through, it probably cost them 2 weeks where they couldn't do any work because they're out on emergency work the whole time. They are back. They probably have 10 poles right now that are bare that can come out. The plan down that end is the contractor is planning to come back this year to get it in much better shape than it's in right now. I mean, it's in very good shape. The job went very well, except for these poles being moved. They're gonna get it into much better shape by winter time. They won't be able to finish the project by winter time. They're kind of waiting right now to get as many poles out of the way. Like I said, right now they could remove 10 poles. Maybe in 2 weeks they could remove 20 poles, and then they'll pour concrete sidewalks where those poles come out and get as much of the project done. And then they'll button stuff up. They've already done line painting. They did work like that because we know we're gonna have to wait till through the winter. So they will be back to dress some stuff up. It won't be done, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board? Anything else? Thank you.
Got it.
Mr. Chairman, there's
Yes.
on the agenda,
Oh,
the waiver.
sorry. Yeah, Chris, the electrical waiver.
Oh, yeah, right, sorry about that.
Thank
So
you.
generally on these projects, there is electrical work going on, so any building permits or electrical permits, we generally, instead of the town paying the town back money, we waive these fees. We don't do it for plumbing and gas permits because those, that's how the employees are actually paid from those fees. But this is electrical, it's really not electrical inspection fees, it's permit fees, so the electrical permit. So I'd request that we waive on the High Street project and the Water Street project. Water Street is the project from Main to High Street. To waive the electrical permit fees.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion the town waive the electrical fees for this project.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm seeing that we have water, trash, sewer abatements. Does anybody have any questions on that we might ask Chris, or? Okay, thanks.
I'm still gonna be here.
But you can, well, if you want to stay, Chris, for some of the next several items, I'll
Sure.
involve you.
Well, you,
Yep. Water, trash, sewer abatements is next. We have been presented a list in the amount of $2,093.32 from the last billing cycle. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion the board approve the abatements as presented by the DPW superintendent.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, thank you. All the new business, Grove Street parking is up first. We have received some concerns and complaints from the ongoing situation at Grove Street. The traffic committee has met on it, and I believe that there's been some meetings with DCR as well.
Yeah, we met, the police chief, Michael and myself, and DCR met to try to get some movement on the DCR opening that last gate and putting in a new gate a little bit further down past some of the old buildings that are there right in that area, which would open up several parking spots. I mean, it's not gonna be dozens of parking spots, but you might get 6 cars in there, which would definitely take the heat. But maybe even more important than that would be, a place for the cars to turn around and not be doing 13-point turns at the end of Grove Street. We after the meeting, we kind of each had a little bit of a, something to accomplish. So, we needed to find some rocks because there's a very steep cliff going off of that. So we were able to track down some rocks. We're working on trying to get the Conservation Commission just to weigh in to make sure we don't need an order of conditions. And then the DCR approached the MWRA, which also obviously has a vested interest in the property. They're okay with moving forward. So we're at a point now where, as long as I think the Conservation, which I don't know if we've had any contact with them, if they're okay with it, I believe we're at a position where we probably can get that gate open relatively soon, which would hopefully alleviate some of the problems. One of the bigger issues down there, and we've been dealing with this for a while, is when you do something to help out one person down there, you inevitably make it worse for somebody else down there. And that's what we found. Some of the line painting we did, a lot of the people down there are very upset about it. The people that were probably the loudest in making the most out of this issue was happy, but their neighbors are not happy. So I basically told them I'm really not putting up any more signs, I'm doing no more painting, so we kind of have an overall resolution and have all the people who are affected by it at least to be heard, instead of just throwing up signs here and there whenever a sign needs to go up. So But right now, I think the best bet is if we can get that gate open, see what happens. It's getting to be the time of year where it's gonna be used less anyways, and then we can check over the winter, maybe see how the spring goes, and regroup after that. But right now, we're just trying to finalize allowing that MWRA to open up that gate to get some extra parking down there.
Sure.
And we're close.
Any questions on this? Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that kind of sums up the complaints that I fielded were that we're trying to solve one problem of the parking down at that end of the road, which everyone agrees is the problem, but it seems like it just kind of like shifted the parking now further down the street. So now instead of parking at the end of the street, they're parking more towards the middle of the street and more in front of people's houses. I agree that the long-term solution is getting some sort of a cooperation to get that gate open. And so just for my own notes, Chris, so the only thing on our end is getting buy-in by the Conservation Commission and something about, you were saying like we need to add rocks or something?
Yeah, we're putting some big boulders in. You know, they're not big on like fences and guardrails, just kind of to be more natural. They wanted to get some boulders, so I've tracked down some large boulders that we're going to line the bank. And if you go through that gate on the left side, it drops down to the Nashua River. So we're just going to put a bunch of boulders so a car can't go over the edge. That's all. And I've tracked down the boulders, so I know where we're getting them, and it shouldn't be a problem to do once we're available. Have there been any? Have you heard anything from conservation?
No. They're meeting tonight.
So that's the big thing is, making sure conservation, hopefully we won't need an order. The only issue, we're putting a few boulders and then there's a gate that has to be installed, so hopefully they'd be okay with that. It's quite a ways away from the river, so.
Okay, and the short term would just be to open it up and with minor modifications, just put the boulders and kind of open it up for cars. Were there talks or is there any interest expressed about making it more of a actual formal parking lot, like actually like paving it or anything like that?
There is, yes. They
Okay.
have talked about possibly doing more work, and you start getting into drainage issues, and if you're going to pave it, you got impervious surfaces, so that's going to take a while. So what we thought is maybe we'd give this a try.
Yep.
It's a hard surface. It's in pretty good shape. There's a few signs they want to put up to not allow people to park on the right side of the road so they can get access, and just to kind of monitor it. And the police chief has, said that he, monitor it often to make sure that people were doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we thought this would be the quickest way to get, and then at least we'll get a feel for if it's gonna work. The other thing they have is there's a couple of buildings on the site down there that they want to tear down, which would actually allow it to kind of expand the parking a little bit more. So you would probably better off waiting to get something more formal for parking. Once they can figure out if they're going to be able to take those buildings down, maybe we'd get 4 extra spots.
Agreed, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think trying it out first is something that should be done whenever
Yeah,
possible. This is
we
a
can close the gate back up and just
Exactly.
get to be a
Low risk, low investment, so
Yep.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but congratulations to the state for thinking of this. And thanks for heading this up. So we'll keep our eye out for that. If you need anything from us, please let us know. West Ledge Estates street lighting, I think we're looking for an update on that, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, Michael can update the board. He did send me an email with an update, and I believe it was, we were waiting for the okay from National Grid to approve the work for the electrician, but then National Grid also wanted some sort of an insurance binder or something. I don't know, you know more about it.
Right, exactly. We just, and Chris, Mr. McGowan has been helping out with this project as well. What the National Grid has allowed us to do is for us to go forward to do the work ourselves. The lights would still just be put on our regular bill. We won't need to meter them. But if we wait for the National Grid to put it in their work schedule, it might not be till next year. So Chris has reached out to a local electrician, got some specs on the work, and National Grid has just approved an agreement to allow us to go forward with the work. So they're looking for insurance, binders for the work that's being done and all that. So we're putting that package together to get to them this week, and then it would just be a matter of when the work can be done.
The biggest question, I don't know what the lead time on the lights is. Sometimes they're quick, some, like the ones on High Street are 16 weeks away. These ones are probably not. They're more standard light fixture than the stuff we're using down there. I'd have to find out what the time frame is to get the lights. But, so, we have to sign the agreement with National Grid. So there's an agreement, right?
Right.
Okay.
The timeline can't be too long, because the whole reason that we have to do this repair work to their receptacles is because they were exposed for so long without lights. That was probably a matter of years, though. I'm sure we're talking a matter of months for the lights.
Yeah, a maximum to get the lights.
Okay.
What I was hoping is we might be able to get the lights within 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, all right. Forget it.
I don't mean, yeah,
Okay.
I'm talking about, much shorter than what we've been through. So,
all right.
Yeah, that's why I can't tell you we're gonna be done in 2 weeks once I get all this paperwork in order, but it's not months and months. It
Okay.
could be 2 months, but, yeah.
Anything else? Thank you. Burnett Hill Water Tank Painting Contract. Superintendent of Public Works is recommending approval of the low bidder DN Tanks Incorporated in the amount of $79,500 to paint the concrete water storage tank on Burnett Hill. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we award the contract as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. I think that is all for you. Thanks, Chris. The fire chief has suggested that the Board of Selectmen waive annual inspection fees for liquor establishments due to the difficult times these businesses are having as a result of the pandemic. Some towns have also considered waiving annual liquor licenses. Estimate is that inspection fees would total approximately $1,200 and annual license fees for liquor establishments totaling $26,200.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I estimate about 26, but when I put this together, a spreadsheet that I handed out to the board, so the actual fees are $20,290. I did break down, as you can see, the categories, so whether, the board would want to consider all of them, or just the categories of the ones that have been closed. So those are all kind of broken out there. So the fire chief and the building inspector were looking to get started on their annual inspections, and there is a fee that's a $60 fee that's charged. So initially, they had approached me about, would the board be willing to waive that fee, but $60 per establishment for a restaurant, for the restaurant businesses. So it would be about $1,200 that it would cost. Then subsequent to that, there's been discussions about the annual fee. Some communities are looking at, waiving the annual fee because a lot of these liquor establishments have been closed, and all their holding costs to keep their business going without being able to bring any revenue in. And, the fees, for individual fees, it could be, $800 is our top fee. So it was just something for the board to consider. We don't charge those until January, till the license are renewed. So it isn't, something the board needs to decide on today. But I think the inspections would be something, maybe give direction to the inspectors that when they're going out, they can, let the people know that they don't need to pay the $60 inspection fee. And then the board can review the spreadsheet if you want to discuss it tonight or in the future, as to how you want to handle it.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to rush through and make a decision on this, but I feel very strongly that we should both waive the upcoming fees and look into and consider, I don't know if we have the ability to refund the past year's fees, but at the very least, waive inspections and licensing fees for the upcoming year. Some of these businesses have not even been allowed to open. The Strand, the Liberty Tavern, I'm sure there's other liquor serving establishments that don't serve food. And the ones that have been able to open are on very short leashes. They're only open because they're able to serve food, and if they're not serving food, they can't serve any more alcohol. I don't like to see us diminishing our operating capital by $20,000, but if we don't do something, we might not have any of, or a lot of these establishments won't be here when this is phased out. So I'm prepared to make a motion this evening that we waive the inspection fees and the licensing fees for all liquor related issues, and also ask for the town administrator and town council to look into the legality of refunding the past calendar year's license fees.
Mr. Chair, I'm interested in seconding that motion, but okay, just point of clarity before I second it, is liquor establishments, we aren't just talking about like restaurants and bars, right? This doesn't include package stores, does it?
Well, this list includes everything. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the categories. So there's restaurant all alcohol, restaurant beer and wine, there's package all alcohol, package beer and wine, and then there's one, the VFW is a veterans club, so they have their own special designation. But on that left column, it breaks out what the fee is per each category of license.
Okay, I mean, not to be the Grinch here, but has anyone witnessed a package store doing bad in the last couple of months? I mean, I think they've been one of the few businesses that have probably gained business through the pandemic, since people can't go to bars or go to restaurants. I don't have any data to back that up. I'm just posing the question. It just doesn't, they just don't strike me as a business that has been decimated by this pandemic.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Conley was saying, right now, we're just waiving the inspectional fee.
No, the motion was the licensing fees as well.
Oh, all right. I thought it was the inspection fee. We could take the other ones up in a meeting down the road.
Do you want to amend your motion or stick with it?
If there's no second, there's no second, but I made the motion.
Ed second your motion.
I didn't second it yet. I
Well, you
said,
didn't second, you said you're,
Clarification, right?
well, you said you're interested in seconding it. Okay.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood the motion before I seconded it. And thank you, Michael, for clearing that up, and I'm sorry I didn't see that here. I'm just, I don't know. Am I way off base here? I'm 100% in favor of doing this for the restaurants and for the bars.
Well, Mr. Jim, for point of clarification, the motion hasn't been seconded yet.
Correct.
But to clarify the motion, my motion was to waive the inspection and licensing fees for all liquor serving establishments, including the package stores. I realize on a sliding scale, some of these businesses have not been hurt, and there's other businesses that have been devastated and not allowed to open, and I'm not personally want to be in the business of splitting the baby. I made the motion that I thought was in the best interest of serving the community.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. SQ Causeway Draft Host Community Agreement. Which one's SQ Causeway? Oh, that's the delivery. Delivery service? Yeah. Okay. Yep.
We know they're not manufacturing, they're not gonna have product there. They still under the regulations in the statute are a marijuana establishment, so they have to get a host community agreement. So their host community agreement will look very similar to all the other ones the board has executed, except we'll take out, all the provisions there about security and odor. It's not applicable to them. But even more importantly, the document you should have, hopefully in front of you, it's just a red line. Recall in all the other host community agreements that we signed, there was a community impact fee, and all of ours have been 3%. In other words, they'll pay 3% to the town of their gross sales. Here, what SQ Causeway is proposing, because again, they're very unique. They don't manufacture any product. They don't sell any product. They're really just they're the data center for their delivery-only license. They won't have any vehicles here, if you recall from the presentation back in June. There's no vehicles that can be stored here, just a data center. So what they're proposing is more of a sliding scale for a community impact fee. I mean, if you think about it, I'm not even sure what the impact is. There certainly is an impact, but not like a a marijuana facility that's actually, selling or manufacturing. So they're proposing of their sales, and the way they make their sales is they enter into agreements with retailers, and that's, to deliver products to consumers. So what they're proposing is a sliding scale where if they make $500,000 or less in the year, they'll pay 1%. If they make between $500,000 and $2 million, they'll pay 2%. If they make over $2 million, they'll pay 3% on that. So that's what they're proposing, rather than the straight 3%, because they're really not manufacturing selling any product. So other than that, the host community agreement will be very similar to the others. So I just wanted to get the board's input on whether or not they're comfortable with that proposal.
Chairman?
Yes.
First, a question. Maybe I'm incorrect in this, but with the other institutions, besides the impact fee, we also recover 3% of their sales as a tax. Does that other sales tax 3%?
That won't apply here because
That won't apply here because they're not buying and selling it.
They're
Okay.
not selling anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just my personal opinion, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
it seems like a reasonable way to accommodate the very different characteristics of this establishment versus the other ones.
And quite frankly, by way of further background, I'm not aware of any, this SQ Causeway may be the first one in the state to get, and the interesting here is they weren't waiting on us here. For this type of license, delivery only license, they don't need a host community agreement right away to go forward. So they're already down their licensing path, they're close. The other applicants that came before the town, they had to get their host community agreement up front. They didn't have, they can do it in parallel because it's like an expedited process. So I think they're pretty close to actually getting the license.
Okay. So you need our.
So I'd be looking for the board to, if they're in favor of this, the compensation as proposed, I'd be looking for a motion that then town council and town administrator could finalize this host community agreement and the town administrator could execute it.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. You want to stay for Comcast? Our long-awaited Comcast renewal. The Cable Committee met last week and voted unanimously to recommend approval of our new Comcast contract. I have some highlights. Do you want to?
Yeah, so this has been going on for quite some time. So it's as the chair just mentioned, it's actually the new license. It's a 10-year license like the last license. So this license will expire now in October of 2030. I don't think I'm going to be negotiating the next license, but one never knows. Anyway, under this new license, I think we got some very favorable terms. The franchise fee that we'll be getting is 5% of gross annual revenues. I think the last license was 3%. Yeah, so we're getting 5% of this license. We're also getting $230,000 in capital funding that goes into the fund to pay Allstate and all the things that we do, buy equipment, and hopefully eventually get maybe get a different studio. If in fact we do move our studio. One of the other highlights is Comcast will put $25,000 toward, the return line for that new studio. They're also going to upgrade our existing interface from, I think it's analog now, to digital. And if we have the need for a third channel, they've also agreed to give us a third PEG access programming channel, if we require one. So those are really the highlights. I think, the team did a good job negotiating this new license, and Comcast, we've gone back and forth, so we're just ready now to be executed by both the town and
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize signature of the contract with Comcast.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? I just want to thank the members of the Cable Committee, Mr. Swan's here, Ed, and Mike and Bob for sticking with us. It did take a little longer than we thought, but all things considered, I think we got a pretty good deal, and I'm excited for this and other things which we'll talk about later during committee reports for the future of cable TV in Clinton. Hearing no further discussion, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
thank you.
Governor Baker recently filed a state budget that provides additional local aid for schools that was used than what was used at annual town meeting. So we would like to discuss the possibility of holding a special town meeting before the end of the year to take care of some issues, including this. Michael, would you like to catch us up?
Sure, just to pick up on what you mentioned, Mr. Chair, I think that when we went to town meeting this spring in June, the state was saying they're going to try their best to level fund local aid to cities and towns. So that was the number the Finance Committee used, and we went to town meeting with. The school had gotten a budget that they were worked very cooperatively so that they could live with and get through the year, but they were using a lot of their reserves to kick in order to make that happen. The school choice money, there's special ed circuit breaker money that they try to keep a little bit of reserve to get them through each year. So they were really dipping into that in order to make the year go. Now, subsequent to our town meeting, the legislature, the governor and the legislature seem to be having agreement on what that local aid number should be for the cities and towns. And with us, the town aid was level funded, but the school aid, there was an increase. So there was a fairly substantial increase. So I think the schools are looking at, is there a possibility to be able to capture that funding so they can save some of their reserves for next year, because all indicators point to probably next year being even tougher than this year. So it seems as though kind of everybody's getting by this year, hoping that the federal government's going to bail everyone out. But then if it doesn't come through, next year is going to be devastating. So if there was a possibility, I think that we could try to get something in before the end of the year, before the tax rate is set. I think it would really help the school's budget. I think it would help the town to kind of put us on a little bit better footing going into next year. So, but I know it's a tight time frame. Special town meeting, we need 2 weeks advertising in the paper. With the pandemic rules, we don't need to get the full quorum, so at least there's the ability to do business with the smaller number of people if things keep getting as difficult as the Board of Health has spoken about tonight. But there might be a couple of other issues that have come up that might need action by town meeting. So if it's a possibility to maybe at least explore, we don't have to know for certain tonight, but at least maybe by the next meeting, we'd have to probably be fairly certain one way or the other by 2 weeks from now. So, we can, if it's something the board is open to, we can ask departments if they have any pressing business. And again, it would only be something very important and not just kind of routine stuff that we can wait till the spring. If there's something very important, I could reach out to departments and bring back to the board at next meeting, and then make a final determination at that point if it's something you're willing to entertain.
Mr. Chairman, it seems like if we authorize something like this, we can always pull back at a certain point, but to expedite planning purposes, I may reserve my judgment for the final vote at that time, but I'd like to make a motion that we ask the town administrator to work with the town clerk's office to pick a proposed date and a schedule for a special town meeting and notify department heads, or is it a public notice we have to put out that we're having a special town meeting and
Not
we're
necessarily.
accepting?
Really, it's just that we would have to put the notice out once the warrant is done to publish the warrant.
Right, okay.
But I think right now it's just really kind of just the notice to say if there's any business out there that people want to bring forward.
Okay, that's what I'm referring to do whatever is necessary to make people aware that we have an open warrant and it'll be closed fairly rapidly, and that we're looking at the possibility of a special town meeting. That's the motion.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
And just to point out, Mr. Chair, I think, we don't have any guarantees. I think it seems as though the governor and legislature are on the same page with those numbers. I was on a Zoom call this week with the head of the Department of Local Services, and they're getting all indications that those are going to be the numbers. So they're trying to let communities know as soon as possible, which was, as of the end of last week, they came out with new preliminary cherry sheets so that people can make these decisions and have their town meetings before a tax rate is set. So they realize that, you know, time is a tight time frame, but they did seem to be fairly confident, but we won't know until the legislature actually votes and signs the bottom line. We won't know for sure, so.
Yeah, well, this buys us a couple of weeks to see if the legislation can get their act together, and hopefully things work out. So, any other discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission vacancy appointment. We received a letter from the chair of the Parks and Rec Commission indicating that their board voted on September 30th to request support from the Board of Selectmen to appoint Patricia Kerrigan to the vacancy currently on the commission. It's my understanding we still have to have a joint meeting with them.
Right,
So-
that's the advice from town council, I think, and statutorily, it would need to be a joint meeting of the two boards. I think we just wanted the ability to bring this letter forward to the selectmen for you all to discuss on your own, to see if it's something that we wanted to move forward with, to schedule a meeting with the Parks and Rec, so
And
that
to be
was the
clear,
intent of tonight.
The appointment can't be made without us. Is that correct? Okay. So,
To be even more clear, it can be made without Parks and Rec.
okay.
We post the meeting, we schedule the meeting, and if they choose not to show, we can still make the appointment.
Right.
The legislation says, the Board of Selectmen, along with the remaining members of that board, so, but I'd like to make a motion that we, notify Parks and Recreation that we're scheduling a meeting to fill the vacancy on their board for our next meeting.
Second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Just in that notice, they should post the meeting too.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Mhm.
Make sure that you got all the files, make sure that they should post the meeting at the same time. Even though it's a post on the day, that file.
We'll make sure to put that in there. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, 5-0, thank you. Fuller Field Commission transition update. Mr. Conley?
Is this our subcommittee, Matt and I?
Yes.
Matt?
I'd like to update on the meeting you had with Parks and Rec?
Sure. Matt, feel free to jump in at
Yeah,
any
please.
point. Matt and I met with Parks and Recreation. We outlined the procedure that they need to follow from now until the legislation is passed by the state. But for the time being, they will operate together with Matt as the Fuller Field Commission. They need to post their meetings at the same time, at the same location. They have to separately post the meetings and keep records and make votes and organize. That was my side of the input. Matt, and please jump in, Matt. Matt briefed them on a lot of the activities that were ongoing there and the plans that were being developed for utilization of the field. I think he and, were you and Mike going to get together and give them?
No, he had offered, but next week on the 28th, I'll present a background on the vision and the objective of Fuller Field and the commission, and move forward from there.
I think we made it clear that it was our expectation as the Board of Selectmen and the subcommittee that we were hoping that the plans that the Fuller Field Commission had been developing over the years are carried forward and not lost in this transition.
Great. Keep us posted. Mr. Kovas is up again. Town meeting warrant articles audit update.
I would request that we can table this till the next meeting. I have all the data, and now there's just a couple of things procedurally that I'd like to get some more information on, so I can provide a,
So table.
better explanation.
Goals and objectives?
I sent out, so I sent out a,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Two things.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
oh, sorry.
I missed a big one.
Yeah.
Sorry, my apologies. Human Resources Manager appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a presentation or announcement to the board tonight that we're putting forward the name of Alexis Texera from Worcester to become the new Human Resources Manager. It's been a long process, and we've gone through quite a bit of candidates, and based on where we're at this point, and myself and the Superintendent of Schools feel comfortable with this candidate. I did include for the board to review, after the meeting, the copy of resume in the packet, but we were able to come to a salary agreement and a acceptable offer, and we wanted to put this forward to the board to see how we would proceed from here.
Well, just as a reminder, the appointment is yours, and we have
2 weeks
2 weeks to
reject the appointment if we were so inclined. And if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I move that we waive our 2-week notification period.
Second.
And endorse the appointment. What was that, Ed?
Jumping the gun over there. Motion and seconded. Ed's been waiting for this one for a while. Any discussion? Thank you for, again, this has been a long process with fits and starts. Thanks also to Dr. Meyer for his help, and to any search committees who have helped get us to this point one way or another.
And I as well too, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the board's support and being there through this process, and the committee that helped go through the names, and Dr. Meyer, that we've had many conversations on. And the work is being done upstairs in the office, putting up a wall to separate the two offices to make space for the new hire. So it's kind of all coming together right now at the same time. So by the time this person gives their notice, the office should be all set and ready to go in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So.
It's been a priority of this board since before I was on it to improve the professionalism of service to the taxpayers, and I think this is a great step in that direction, both for making sure that town employees have the resources they need, and professional development and reviews and all the things that an organization this size should have. So I'm excited to work with her, and I'm very glad we get this one wrapped up. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Under old and new business?
Yes. Apologies.
I wanted to bring up what I thought was old business and terminated business, but
Yes.
seems to be resurrecting itself. The town of Bolton has made it clear, and I have a great deal of respect for our neighboring communities, and especially the town administrator in Bolton, who is a Clinton resident, but I take strong exception to at least the article that I read in the item, and the attitude of the management in that town regarding Clinton's access to 495. Again, they're talking about, I don't know what methodology they intend to use or how they're going to pursue this, but they made it perfectly clear that they're going to continue pursuing a truck exclusion on Wattaquattack Hill Road, which is a primary access road for, at least for the businesses on the Water Street end of town, Green Street, Reisner Corporation, all the facilities down on Green Street, and for the rest of the town. And since I've been a citizen in this town paying attention, there's been, every time we talked about revitalizing the town and encouraging business, one of the biggest roadblocks we have is highway access. And I'm drawing off of this article, this blockade that the town of Bolton wants to put on the town of Clinton. If they accomplish this truck exclusion, they'll simply be pushing traffic further down 117 and into intersections in Lancaster coming into Clinton, which are just as difficult as the Wattaquatic Hill Road intersection is. And they'll be rerouting traffic and making it heavier on another part of the town of Clinton, which is a commercial town. We have a lot of businesses, we have a lot of truck traffic, and a lot of it is serving the residents of Berlin, Bolton, Lancaster, Sterling. Those residents come here to avail themselves of the businesses that are in our town. The article started off making reference to horse and buggy days, and that it's been a long time since wagons and horses were negotiating that turn. The town of Bolton recently redesigned that intersection, knowing that there was a problem, and they made it worse. They intentionally and deliberately made the entrance to Wattaquatic Hill Road much more difficult for truck traffic to negotiate those turns. They created, I don't know how you address the lanes, but access lanes, which moved the truck traffic tighter to the corner and made it more difficult for those trucks to negotiate the turn either way, coming from Clinton or going into Clinton. Water Street was, after a long time, repaired to and reconditioned and built up to the highest standards that a roadway can be developed. And part of that was because it is a gateway to the town of Clinton from other parts of the state utilizing 495. So if there's a bigger problem in Bolton at that intersection, it's their own fault. They did it. They intentionally, deliberately created an intersection that is now more difficult for heavy truck traffic to negotiate. And the idea that they're just going to shut it down to the traffic that's coming to and from Clinton it's offensive to me. They might as well, we can't even build a wall with Mexico and they want to build a wall with Clinton. I think it's wrong. I think what I really want to do is make sure that the town administrator and the town solicitor stay in touch, and the DPW superintendent stay in touch with the situation, be aware of whatever maneuvering, backroom deals they're trying to make to close down that road, and do whatever is necessary to keep that road open to commercial traffic coming to Clinton. That's it.
Mr. Chair, do we think that this would be something that would warrant I know I'm not subcommittee crazy, I know I've created too many over the last couple of years, but would this be something that would warrant a subcommittee, maybe 2 selectmen to kind of stay on top of this, maybe possibly attend a town meeting in Bolton and express our feelings on this issue and keep meeting regularly with the...
In the interest of disclosure, the town administrator did call me, saying that the District 3 head was willing to pull a meeting together with chairs and town administrators to talk about the issue. And, you know, it was clear from that discussion that unless something new drastically changed, that our board had stated its opinion and wasn't going to change. So, you know, I as I'm sure Mr. Conley is, we're interested in being good neighbors to the point where it's not going to be detrimental to Clinton. And I think we, as I told Mr. Lowe, we voted on it, and I don't, unless things change, I don't see how the vote would change. So I'm happy to meet with anybody, and I told him that too. I just don't know what's different. If they're not going to change anything, then unless the board wants to change, I don't see. So, Michael, if they're interested in meeting again, I'm happy to talk to anybody. But I think I made it clear to him, as the board did when we voted, that we're not in favor of this proposal. So I don't know if we need a
just keep complaining, I guess.
Yeah.
I just want to make, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that through whatever avenues are available to us, either between the state highway officials that Chris is familiar with, or Don, I mean, Mike can stay on top of this. I don't want something coming in that we're not aware of. I want to be, make sure that our whoever, I don't know who to assign it to, whether it's town administrator or the superintendent or town solicitor, but I'd like to make sure that it doesn't slip by us and an opportunity to protest or stop this from happening is missed, that's all.
And there's other, I mean, we
Send them a
can,
letter. Should we send, I mean, what would you?
Yeah, I think we'd have to like see what's possible, what they can do, and then try to seek out those avenues to follow any proceedings based on what legally they're able to do or not do.
Mr. Chairman,
We'll
I'd
do
like to
some
make a
research.
motion that we direct the town administrator utilizing whatever resources he deems necessary to research this and make sure that we're timely and prompt in any resistance to the idea of shutting down Clinton access to 117.
Second that motion.
Motion made and seconded, any discussion? And if there's anything I can do, just let me know. I mean, I'm happy to meet with anybody if it takes that. As I said, I see nothing changing, but we do want to stay on top of it. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Goals and objectives, Ed?
have you guys been able to access that spreadsheet that I sent?
I don't know if I saw it.
I just checked mine again, I don't have it.
Okay, I mean, it's really then, there's no purpose in me just talking. If the spreadsheet's not in front of your eyes, then we'll table till the next meeting. I mean, there is a template created. It's not completely populated with all the goals and objectives, but there's enough in there to at least get an idea of the format of the spreadsheet. So I will just, we can table it. I will confirm tomorrow that everyone has an electronic copy and is able to review it, and then we can put it on for next meetings, for the next meeting's goals and objectives.
Thank you. Committee reports?
This isn't really a committee report,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, but I'd like to ask that on our next agenda, where we're meeting with Parks and Recreation to make an appointment to fill that vacancy, that we also have on our agenda the appointment of the town employee representative to the Personnel Board.
Michael and I discussed that, so that will be on our next meeting. As I said, the Cable Committee met last week, and we're going to meet again tomorrow to hopefully come up with a list of finalists or prospective candidates we're going to interview for the director position. So hopefully that's another one that's been taking a while, that we can get some traction on that. And the Solid Waste Advisory Committee is going to meet tomorrow. That's one we haven't done in a while either. So I'll have an update on that at our next meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Hold on. Yep.
the Image Advisory Committee is gonna meet tomorrow as well.
Terrific.
In the Municipal Evaluation Subcommittee, I believe we met after our last meeting, and we took a look at our evaluation. Selectman Kobus took some examples of some other town administrator evaluations from around the state, so we took that format. We took a look at Mike's contract, and we put in some of the deliverables that he's responsible for into that evaluation, and we'll be meeting Friday to go over that evaluation. We're hoping to, if not this meeting, definitely by the next meeting, get an evaluation form to the Board of Selectmen for approval, for review and approval. And that's the beginning of that subcommittee. So after Mike's evaluation is squared away, then we can start focusing on, with the help from the new human resources manager, how we're gonna tackle all the other evaluations cascading down from the town administrator.
Any other committee reports? Thank you. This concludes our regular business. We'll be entering executive session, 2 executive sessions for Article 6 and 3 of the open meeting law. We will not be resuming open session, so I will accept a nomination to enter executive session. Yes?
Want a motion?
Yeah.
to enter executive session.
Roll call.
Yeah, it's a roll call vote. We'll do the roll call, do we need a motion?
Just the roll call, you don't do.
Roll call vote, Mr. DeVoe?
Ed DeVault, aye.
Mr. Conley?
Aye.
Mr. Buzzell?
Aye.
Mr. Covas? Aye. And the chair is aye. Thank you, good night.